The 6th of June 1884. You are sitting at your desk at home. Not in an office, not in a grand studio. At home, after work, with a piece of paper in front of you, and a pencil in your hand, and an idea in your head that will not leave you alone. You make a rough calculation. You draw a sketch. A tower, 300 meters tall. 4 iron legs spreading wide at the base, climbing upward, narrowing as they rise, joining at a single point at the top. You look at it for a while. You call it simply a pylon. You have no idea, sitting at that desk on that evening, that you have just drawn the most recognized structure in human history. You have no idea that 140 years from now, 10 million people a year will stand beneath it and look up, and almost none of them will know your name. Your name is Maurice Koechlin. You are reserved, quiet, publicity shy. You are the kind of person who works away on the sidelines and solves problems with innovative ideas and technical skill, while your boss is the kind of person who is ambitious, extroverted, a social butterfly with political connections, and a gift for standing in the light. This difference will define your entire life. You simply do not know it yet. You grew up in Mulhouse, in the Alsace region of France. Your family were industrialists. Your father ran a spinning mill. You understood the mechanics of things from the time you were a child, how structures bear weight, how materials respond to pressure, how something invisible becomes something real through calculation and steel. You studied in Zurich under a professor named Carl Kuhlmann. He invented graphic statics, a revolutionary method for understanding how forces move through structures. Most students found it difficult. You found it beautiful. Kuhlmann was so impressed by you that when Gustav Eiffel came looking for his best graduate, Kuhlmann named you without hesitation. You were 23 years old when you walked into Gustav Eiffel's company. You would spend the rest of your working life there. Your first major project was the Garabit Viaduct, a railway bridge in the south of France, crossing a river valley 122 meters below. Nobody had built anything like it before. The calculations alone took months. The structural challenges were unlike anything in the existing textbooks. You solved them. The bridge was a masterpiece. It stood. It worked. It was beautiful. Engineers came from across Europe to study it. The newspapers wrote about Gustav Eiffel. Your name appeared in the technical journals, the ones that engineers read, nobody else. You noted this. You did not complain. You went back to work. Then came the Statue of Liberty. The sculptor Bartholdi had designed the exterior, the copper figure, the raised torch, the crown. But a statue 93 meters tall cannot stand on its own. It needs an internal skeleton. A structure that can bend with the wind without breaking, something that has never been built before at that scale. You designed it. You created a flexible lattice skeleton, not rigid, but responsive. This flexibility proved game-changing as the copper coating mounted on it could withstand temperature fluctuations and changing wind loads. The Statue of Liberty was inaugurated in New York in 1886. 10 million Americans watched. The newspapers wrote about Bartholdi. They wrote about the gift from France to America. They wrote about the symbolism of freedom and light. They did not write about the skeleton. They never write about the skeleton. You noted this too. You went back to work. May 1884. The offices of the Eiffel Company, Paris. You and your colleague Émile Nouguier are talking about the upcoming World's Fair. Paris needs a centerpiece, something monumental, something that has never been done. You come up with the idea of a very tall tower made of metal Eiffel's speciality. That evening you go home, you sit at your desk, you pick up a pencil, you draw. 300 meters, 4 lattice legs. A tapering form inspired directly by the bridge piers you have been working on for years. You title it simply, 300-meter tall pylon. The next morning you show it to Eiffel. He says he is not interested. Not impressed, not excited, not even curious. He looks at the sketch and says, it is too basic, too industrial, not elegant enough. He tells you to keep working on it if you want, but he has other things to do. You note this, you keep working. You work with Steven Silvestre, the company's architect. Together, you add details. Decorative arches at the base, glass pavilions on each level, curves that soften the industrial severity into something that feels both powerful and graceful. You present the reworked design again. This time, Eiffel looks at it differently. This time, he is convinced. And he registers a patent in the names of Eiffel, Nouguier, and Koechlin. Your name is on the patent. For one moment, your name is on something. Then, Eiffel buys the rights from you and Nouguier. The patent becomes his. The project becomes his. The tower becomes his. And just like that, the thing you drew at your desk at home on a June evening becomes the Eiffel Tower. Not the Koechlin Tower. Not the tower of the man who drew it. The tower of the man who bought it. From 1887 to 1889, you oversee the construction personally. You produce 5,300 detailed drawings. You manage innumerable calculations. You supervise the foundation. You supervise every bolt, every rivet, every iron joint. 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days. You are there for all of it. At the opening ceremony in May 1889, Gustave Eiffel climbs to the top of the tower. He plants a French flag. The crowd cheers. The newspapers photograph him. The world watches. You stand somewhere in the crowd. You watch a man stand at the top of something you drew on a Tuesday evening at your kitchen table. You do not feel bitterness. That is not who you are. You feel something more complicated, something that does not have a clean name. Something that sits between pride and grief and acceptance and the quiet knowledge of a thing that cannot be changed. The ambitious man and the quiet man. Eiffel had the political connections, the business sense, the ability to stand in the spotlight and make the world believe that the vision was his. You had the pencil, the paper, the calculation, the sketch. The two things are not equal. The world decided long ago which one it would remember. Years pass. The tower was supposed to stand for 20 years and then be torn down. But it proved too useful for radio transmission, for meteorological observation, for the simple fact that people loved it in a way no one expected. It stayed. Every year, more people came. Every year, the name above the entrance remained the same. You became the director of the Eiffel Company after Eiffel retired. You ran it for decades. You were respected inside the industry. Engineers knew your name. The men who understood structures knew what you had done. But the world, the 10 million people a year who would eventually pass beneath those iron arches, they did not. In 1939, at the tower's 50th anniversary, a journalist asked you whether it should have been called the Koechlin Tower instead. You were 83 years old. You thought about it. You said the father of the tower is Eiffel, but the idea and the calculations are mine. Not angry, not bitter, just factual, just true. The journalist wrote it down. The quote appeared in a small article, then it was forgotten. You died in 1,946 inches Switzerland, in a house you built yourself, aged 89. The war had just ended. Europe was rebuilding. And somewhere in Paris, the tower you drew on a June evening in 1884 was still standing, still receiving visitors, still carrying the name of the man who bought your patent. You had outlived Eiffel by 23 years. You had outlived almost everyone who knew the full story. If you visit the Eiffel Tower today and walk to the first floor, on the passage between the south and west pillars, you will find a small street named after you. Was Maurice Koechlin, a street, on the first floor, that most visitors walk past without reading. This is what the world gave you. A street, on the thing you invented. There is a question that this story asks and does not answer. What is the difference between the person who has the idea and the person who owns it? What is the difference between the person who draws the thing and the person whose name goes on the door? In every office, in every company, In every collaboration in the history of human achievement, somewhere there is a quiet person at a desk after hours, with a pencil and a piece of paper, drawing something that the world will one day recognize. And somewhere nearby there is a person with better political connections, a stronger public presence, and a willingness to write their name on things that other people drew. History tends to remember the second person. Maurice Koechlin was one of those people whose creations are much more famous than they are. He designed the skeleton of the Statue of Liberty. He built the Garabit Viaduct. He drew, at his kitchen table on a Tuesday evening, the most visited monument on Earth. And if you have ever worked hard on something and watched someone else take the credit, if you have ever been the quiet one in the room while someone louder stood in the spotlight, if you have ever been the skeleton inside, something beautiful that the world admires without knowing you exist, then you already know exactly how Maurice Koechlin felt. You just never knew his name. Until now. If this story stayed with you, then you are exactly who this channel is for. Every week on Next Life, we find the people history forgot, the ones who built everything, the ones whose names were never on the door. Subscribe, hit the bell, because next week, we find someone else the world forgot. Your next life starts now.